The morning began quietly, as mornings often do. I woke with the gentle pull of sleep gradually letting go of its hold. There was no alarm blaring, no sudden urgency demanding action, only the soft awareness of the day beginning, as if it had been slowly waiting for me to notice. My eyes opened to a muted light filtering through the curtains. The room smelled faintly of the night, of warmth and fabric, familiar and unremarkable, yet comforting. I felt the weight of my body pressing into the mattress, limbs heavy but pliable, each part of me sensing the moment, awake but not yet moving. I lay still, noticing the rise and fall of my chest, the rhythm of breath, and the subtle vibrations of life outside the walls of my room, the faint rustle of leaves, a distant car hum, the quiet call of a bird. There is a strange kind of wonder in mornings like this, though it is subtle and easy to overlook. It does not demand attention, it does not shout. Instead, it whispers through the ordinary details, inviting reflection and awareness. I allowed myself to notice, to simply exist in the moment. I became aware of the temperature in the room, the softness of the sheets against my skin, the slight tension in my shoulders that reminded me of yesterday's movements. I extended my arms above my head, letting my spine stretch, arching slowly and deliberately. My back responded, muscles lengthening in acknowledgement of the new day. I rolled my shoulders gently, loosening the knots of sleep, and felt a faint satisfaction in the simple act of waking and moving. After a few moments, I swung my legs over the side of the bed and planted my feet on the cool floor. The first step toward activity is always a small commitment, a gentle agreement with myself to begin. I moved slowly, paying attention to the sensations in my ankles, calves, and knees. Nothing about this movement was urgent or hurried, it was deliberate, mindful, and calm. I made my way to the dresser, carefully selecting my clothes for the day. Simple choices, simple garments, yet each decision reinforced the sense of structure and order. I dressed with quiet intention, aware that even the most ordinary actions can be a form of preparation, an affirmation that I was ready to engage with the day ahead. Next, I made the bed. It is a small, almost trivial task, yet it carries a surprising weight. The process of straightening the sheets, smoothing out wrinkles, arranging pillows, it organizes more than just the room. It creates a sense of completion, a gentle foundation of accomplishment that colors the rest of the day. My room, modest and familiar, now felt subtly transformed. The act of order in one small corner of life reminded me that consistency, even in small things, creates stability. There was no dramatic revelation in the movement, only the quiet satisfaction of care taken and attention given. Brushing my teeth followed, and with it, another small, habitual rhythm. The taste of mint, the sound of water splashing in the sink, the subtle vibration of the brush against enamel, all these sensory details anchored me further in the present moment. Washing my face afterward, I felt the cool water awaken my senses, refreshing both body and mind. In these rituals, repeated countless times, there is a lesson often overlooked, that true preparation for life begins not in grand gestures, but in the repetition of small, mindful actions. Discipline is quietly built through repetition, not drama. With these foundational tasks complete, I poured a cup of tea. The steam rose slowly, curling upward, carrying warmth into my hands and fragrance into my awareness. I carried it to the window and sat, observing the world outside. The sunlight moved gradually across the room, shifting shadows from one corner to another. Leaves swayed softly in the breeze. Birds flitted from branch to branch, their movements unhurried. Somewhere, a distant car moved with quiet purpose along the empty street. I sipped the tea slowly, noticing the flavor, the warmth, the tactile pleasure of the cup in my hands. This moment, entirely ordinary, was profoundly grounding. It reminded me that presence is cultivated in the unnoticed, in the quiet, in the repetition of life's small rhythms. I reflected on gratitude. Gratitude does not need to be grandiose, it can be as simple as noticing the warmth of sunlight, the taste of tea, or the sound of wind moving through leaves. Each small acknowledgement reinforces awareness of life's subtle richness. I thought about the ordinary elements I often overlook: the soft hum of a refrigerator, the way the morning light hits the corner of the room, the faint scent of fabric, the slow inhale and exhale of my own breath. These details, when noticed and appreciated, form the foundation for contentment and calm. The walk that followed was slow, deliberate, and intentional. I moved through my neighborhood with awareness, noticing the texture of the pavement beneath my feet, the slight unevenness of the sidewalks, the pattern of cracks that I had walked over countless times yet never truly observed. I paid attention to the interplay of light and shadow, how the sunlight hit the edge of a building, how it reflected off a windowpane. Trees swayed gently, brushing their leaves against each other in quiet conversation with the wind. The air was cool but not cold, carrying subtle scents of earth, grass, and distant flowers. Every step was intentional. I did not rush, nor did I have a destination. Walking, in this deliberate manner, became meditation. The rhythm of my feet matched the rhythm of my breath. Each movement was a reminder that consistency, patience, and presence are quietly powerful. Growth, I realized, does not come from sporadic bursts of intensity, but from repeated, mindful actions. Movement, thought, and attention, repeated over time, compound into well-being, clarity, and resilience. Returning home, I prepared a simple breakfast, a couple of eggs, a slice of bread, and some fruit. Each bite was consumed slowly, with awareness of texture, flavor, and nourishment. Eating in this manner reinforced the lesson that even the most ordinary activities, when done mindfully, contribute to health and satisfaction. Meals, like walking, stretching, or journaling, may seem mundane, but they accumulate significance over time. Health, clarity, and vitality are quietly built through repetition, awareness, and care. After breakfast, I journeyed for a few minutes. My writing was simple thoughts, reflections, observations about the morning, and subtle realizations about life. I did not aim for profundity or drama. Instead, the act of recording ordinary experiences allowed me to observe patterns, track consistency, and reinforce awareness. Each line of writing, though brief and unremarkable, was a reminder that progress is often invisible, emerging only when the accumulation of small actions reaches a critical mass. I then engaged in gentle stretches and light bodyweight exercises. No strain, no high intensity, only deliberate, mindful movement. Each bend, twist, and extension reinforced my awareness of the body, its capabilities, and its needs. Over time, these small, consistent actions strengthen muscles, improve flexibility, and support long-term physical well-being. I understood that motivation is fleeting, but habit is lasting. Small, repeated actions form the true backbone of health, far more than sporadic bursts of dramatic effort ever could. Hydration, tidying my living space, and organizing minor tasks followed naturally. Drinking water, arranging items, and clearing surfaces may appear trivial, yet they build structure, reduce mental clutter, and support focus. The impact of these small acts is cumulative. Each step, each minor effort, contributes to a foundation of calm, order, and readiness. In this ordinariness lies quiet power. After finishing the morning's quiet rituals, I felt a subtle readiness to move. The body, now awake but still calm, seemed to invite gentle motion. I stepped outside, feeling the cool air brush against my skin. The street was calm, almost empty, a muted hum of life in the background. The sun had climbed slightly higher, casting soft light across the sidewalks and rooftops. Each movement I made, lifting a foot, shifting weight, bending slightly, was deliberate. I paid attention to how my muscles stretched, how my joints felt, and how each breath moved through my body. Walking slowly was not merely transportation, it was a meditation in motion, a chance to observe both the world outside and the world within. The neighborhood, though familiar, revealed small, unnoticed details. A crack in the sidewalk formed a pattern I had walked over hundreds of times, yet today, it caught my attention. A leaf had fallen at an odd angle, twisting in the light breeze, a small spectacle unnoticed in most days. A neighbor hung laundry on a line, the motion of the cloth flapping gently creating soft rhythm. These ordinary sights, often overlooked, were quietly remarkable when noticed. Walking allowed me to slow my perception, to register life in its minutiae. Each step became a deliberate act of mindfulness, an awareness of the present, and a recognition that consistency, like the repetitive motion of feet on pavement, builds endurance, health, and mental clarity. Along the way, I paused to stretch. Simple extensions, reaching for the sky, bending toward the ground, rotating my shoulders and hips. Nothing strenuous, nothing extreme, just movements that reminded me I was inhabiting a body capable of gentle strength. Stretching in this deliberate manner brought awareness to muscles and joints that often go unnoticed in sedentary routines. It highlighted the value of daily, small actions over dramatic, irregular bursts of effort. Strength, flexibility, and resilience are quietly built over time, in these unremarkable, repeated gestures. Returning home, I prepared a simple breakfast. Nothing elaborate, nothing flashy: eggs, bread, fruit, and a cup of tea. Yet, in the simplicity, there was opportunity for mindfulness. I arranged the plate, noticing colors, textures, and the warmth of each ingredient. The eggs were soft and slightly steaming, the fruit cool and firm, the bread crisped just enough to create gentle contrast. I ate slowly, bite by bite, savoring each sensation. Eating with this level of attention transforms the ordinary into a ritual. The act of nourishing the body becomes a practice in presence, reinforcing the idea that small choices matter. Choosing healthful ingredients, eating slowly, and observing the act itself contributes to long-term well-being far more than any one dramatic decision. Hydration accompanied the meal, each sip of water a quiet acknowledgement of the body's needs. Drinking slowly, I felt a sense of replenishment and readiness. The awareness of small routines: water, nutrition, movement began to form a subtle rhythm, a foundation that would support the rest of the day. These seemingly minor choices accumulate over time, shaping energy, focus, and mental clarity. In fact, one could argue that life's greatest transformations often emerge not from dramatic events but from the patient repetition of such small acts. I spent a few minutes observing the tea's steam rising, curling in the air. The movement was slow, almost imperceptible, yet captivating when given attention. It reminded me that ordinary phenomena, when noticed, can be sources of calm and reflection. Life does not need to be loud or eventful to be meaningful. In the quiet details, the soft rhythms, the mundane rituals, there is a depth of experience waiting to be appreciated. Even something as simple as tea or breakfast becomes a vehicle for mindfulness, presence, and a subtle joy. After breakfast, I took another short walk, this time around the block, observing more details of the environment and my own internal state. Each step became a meditation, a reinforcement of the morning's lessons. I noticed the texture of the pavement beneath my shoes, the subtle creak of branches as wind moved through them, the faint scent of distant flowers mingling with the cool morning air. My breathing synchronized with my pace, slow and steady, filling my lungs with air that carried both oxygen and awareness. These moments of deliberate, mindful movement reminded me that health is not just about fitness, it is about consistency, attention, and the accumulation of small, intentional actions. Returning home again, I spent a few minutes stretching inside. I bent gently, reaching for toes, twisting lightly, rolling my shoulders. The repetition of these movements brought awareness to the muscles that supported my daily activities. I considered how small daily exercises, though unremarkable on their own, compound over time. They strengthen the body, improve flexibility, and support long-term vitality. There is a quiet satisfaction in this knowledge, a sense of control and confidence that comes from recognizing the cumulative power of simple habits. I then spent some time in reflection, sitting quietly with my tea, thinking about the importance of patience and consistency. Life, much like movement and nutrition, is built on repetition and attention. Each ordinary act, though small and seemingly insignificant, contributes to a greater whole. Just as stretching and walking strengthen the body incrementally, consistent reflection, mindfulness, and care strengthen the mind, emotional resilience, and overall well-being. Recognizing this connection transforms the mundane into meaningful practice. By the time mid-morning arrived, the routines of gentle movement, mindful nutrition, and reflection had established a rhythm. The body felt awake, light, and engaged, while the mind was calm, focused, and attentive. These small, ordinary practices, repeated daily, were quietly building a foundation not only for health but for clarity, patience, and resilience. I understood that dramatic gestures or extraordinary efforts were fleeting. Lasting transformation comes from consistency, intention, and the mindful integration of simple actions into daily life. After completing the morning rituals of movement and nutrition, I returned to the quiet rhythm of the day. The world outside had begun to hum softly, yet it remained calm, uneventful, and steady, the way ordinary life often does. I moved deliberately through my apartment, pausing to notice the spaces I occupied. Each corner, each surface, offered subtle details often overlooked in the rush of busier days. A small stack of books by the window, the slight unevenness of a shelf, the gentle curl of a curtain in the morning breeze, these were ordinary, unremarkable things, yet when observed, they grounded me. Presence, I realized, begins with noticing what is already there, with appreciating the mundane and letting it anchor the mind. I began tidying the space, a slow, deliberate process. Straightening papers, arranging books, wiping surfaces, it required attention, yet demanded nothing dramatic. Each action carried a quiet sense of purpose. Tidying is not merely about organization, it is about clarity of mind. A clean space reflects, and often fosters, a clean mind. By taking care of the environment, I felt a subtle shift within, a sense of readiness and openness. The act itself is almost meditative. Every item returned to its place, every surface cleared, reinforced the understanding that small, repeated actions create order in both external and internal spaces. Next came journaling. I sat with a notebook and pen, the page blank yet inviting. Writing is often thought of as a creative or intellectual task, but here it was simply an exercise in observation, reflection, and presence. I noted the sensations of the morning, the patterns of thought, and the small victories of completing routines. I wrote about the tea, the stretches, the short walks, and the subtle lessons embedded within them. Nothing dramatic, nothing extraordinary, but everything meaningful when considered carefully. Journaling in this way captures ordinary moments and allows them to transform into insights. It reinforces self-awareness, patience, and consistency, qualities often overlooked yet foundational to growth. While journaling, I paused to drink water, slow and deliberate sips. Hydration is another mundane act that quietly supports both body and mind. Its importance is rarely dramatic, but the impact is cumulative. Each small choice contributes to energy levels, focus, and overall wellness. I considered the parallels between this and other aspects of life. Small, ordinary actions, repeated consistently, build the foundation for lasting progress. One sip, one stretch, one reflection at a time, life moves forward. I then planned the day's tasks in a calm, unhurried manner. Not a list designed to overwhelm, but a gentle outline of intentions. Writing down small, achievable actions, tidying, organizing, a brief reading session, a simple walk helped me orient myself. There is power in structure, even if subtle. Planning is not about forcing the day into rigid order, it is about creating a framework within which ordinary life can unfold smoothly. It supports discipline, patience, and mindfulness, reminding me that even uneventful days can be purposeful and rich when approached thoughtfully. Mid-morning gave way to quiet reflection. I sat by the window, noticing light shifting across the room, the soft rustle of leaves, and the faint sounds of distant activity. Observation, I realized, is a skill often overlooked in pursuit of excitement. The ordinary contains lessons if one pays attention. The subtle movement of light teaches patience, the steady rhythm of the day teaches endurance, and the repetition of small habits teaches growth. These lessons are not flashy, they require presence and willingness to notice the small things, yet they quietly shape character and mindset over time. During this period, I revisited small daily habits, tidying again, refilling water, arranging items neatly. Each repetition, though uneventful, reinforced the rhythm of life and the value of routine. The simple act of returning an object to its place, of noticing the slight imperfections in a surface, or of correcting a misalignment, became a quiet meditation in itself. These are the habits that create consistency, resilience, and internal harmony. Over time, they build a mental and emotional foundation that dramatic moments alone cannot provide. I spent a few moments observing my breathing, sitting with awareness of the body. Breath, ordinary and often unnoticed, carries life and anchors attention. I noted how the air moved in and out, how it filled my lungs, and how the body responded. This subtle practice of mindfulness, the quiet noticing of an everyday function, reminded me that growth often happens in the unremarkable, repeated, and patient engagement with life. Mindfulness is not always about intense meditation or dramatic revelation, it is cultivated in ordinary acts, in presence, and in awareness. A light, simple lunch followed. I prepared it slowly, focusing on balance and nourishment rather than complexity or flair. The act of cooking, arranging food, and eating attentively reinforced lessons of care and intention. Each bite was savored, the texture and flavor observed, and the body felt recognized and attended to. Nutrition, like movement and journaling, is a daily investment with long-term dividends. Ordinary actions compound over time. One mindful meal, repeated day after day, contributes to health, energy, and satisfaction. After lunch, I returned to journaling and planning. I reflected on the morning, noting the subtle accomplishments, completing stretches, observing surroundings, maintaining hydration, and keeping the space orderly. These may appear insignificant when viewed individually, but together, they formed a coherent, meaningful routine. Consistency is rarely dramatic, it is quiet, cumulative, and powerful. The repetition of ordinary habits creates stability, confidence, and inner calm. Growth is not always flashy, it often exists in small, invisible increments. Later, I spent time reading quietly. I chose a book with reflective, calm content, not thrilling plots or dramatic narratives, but passages that encouraged thoughtfulness. I noticed how the mind absorbs lessons subtly when it is calm, attentive, and free from distraction. Reading slowly, absorbing ideas, and reflecting on them became a meditation in its own right. Ordinary reading, practiced consistently, develops perspective, patience, and insight. These are qualities that support long-term personal growth far more than sporadic moments of excitement ever could. The afternoon approached with the same steady rhythm. I returned to small household tasks, tidying, organizing, washing dishes, allowing each movement to be deliberate and mindful. These ordinary chores, often considered mundane, became. By late morning, the quiet rhythm of the day had settled into a familiar pattern. I felt calm, attentive, and grounded, the mind alert yet unhurried. It was time to step into a slightly different dimension of ordinary life: social connection. Not dramatic, not eventful, just the gentle presence of others. I stepped outside once more, walking slowly to a nearby neighbor's house. A simple greeting, a nod, a brief conversation, these were the ordinary threads that tied daily life together. The neighbor smiled as I approached. We exchanged simple pleasantries, commenting on the weather, the quietness of the morning, and the subtle signs of seasonal change. The words themselves were ordinary, mundane even, yet the interaction carried significance. A smile, a gentle nod, and brief attention are small gestures, but they create continuity, warmth, and connection. Over time, these repeated interactions build relationships and a subtle sense of belonging. Social connections do not always need drama or excitement to matter, they matter precisely because they are steady, reliable, and consistent. As we spoke, I noticed the importance of listening. Not just hearing words, but attending to subtle cues, the tone, pauses, and inflections. Listening in this attentive, ordinary way fosters empathy and understanding. It creates a bridge between individuals, even when the conversation is simple. A brief check-in, a question about well-being, or a shared observation can strengthen bonds quietly, steadily, and meaningfully. Social connection, like habit building, grows through small, repeated gestures. Walking back home, I reflected on the subtle power of these interactions. Ordinary conversations remind us of our shared human experience. Even without drama, they provide affirmation, empathy, and a sense of continuity. The cumulative effect of these small, thoughtful exchanges shapes emotional resilience, mood, and perspective. They remind us that we are not isolated, even in the quietest of days. A simple, "How are you?" or a smile may seem trivial in isolation, but over time, they form a foundation of trust and connection that quietly supports our lives. Later, I had a brief phone call with a family member. The conversation was ordinary, unremarkable in content, but rich in connection. We exchanged updates about daily life, shared small observations, and even laughed softly at minor miscommunications. The conversation required no drama, no urgency, yet it reminded me of the importance of consistency in relationships. Regular check-ins, however brief, build bonds and foster understanding over time. The quality of connection is often less about the intensity of moments and more about the constancy of attention and presence. As I reflected further, I realized that human interaction mirrors many other aspects of life. Growth, well-being, and personal development are cumulative, quiet, and often invisible until viewed in context. A single phone call, a brief conversation, a shared cup of tea, each contributes incrementally to emotional well-being. These ordinary moments, unnoticed by some, are the threads of a resilient, connected life. Relationships, like habits, are strengthened not through extraordinary gestures but through repeated, mindful attention. I spent some time observing the subtle details of interaction around me. A neighbor waving to another across the street, the gentle exchange of words between a parent and child, a passerby holding a door open. These small acts, though ordinary, carry significance when noticed. They are reminders that life is composed not of dramatic peaks, but of consistent, small, meaningful actions. Each of these moments teaches patience, attentiveness, and the quiet cultivation of kindness. Returning home, I reflected on my own approach to connection. It is easy to overlook the significance of ordinary gestures in a world that glorifies dramatic events. Yet, I realize that empathy, attentiveness, and reliability are quietly powerful. They build trust and intimacy, often more deeply than sporadic expressions of excitement or intensity. I considered the ways I could nurture these relationships further: brief conversations, thoughtful check-ins, and the intentional act of listening fully when another speaks. During the afternoon, I practiced gratitude for the presence of these people in my life. I acknowledged the small, ordinary moments, the smiles, the greetings, the brief conversations that quietly enrich existence. Gratitude, like connection, is cumulative. Recognizing the ordinary, appreciating its subtle value, and reflecting on its impact strengthens both perspective and emotional balance. Each interaction, no matter how mundane, is an opportunity to foster understanding, kindness, and empathy. Even small acts of service contribute to this quiet web of connection. I took a few minutes to help a neighbor with a minor task, carrying a small package from the doorstep, adjusting a chair, or offering a brief word of assistance. The gestures themselves were minor, yet the effect was noticeable. Gratitude, trust, and warmth radiated quietly, reminding me that ordinary life is full of opportunities to build connections, support others, and create stability in relationships. Walking back home once more, I felt the subtle impact of the morning and early afternoon interactions. My mood was steady, my awareness heightened, and my mind carried a quiet sense of fulfillment. The ordinary, uneventful conversations had left an impression stronger than any dramatic encounter could. They reminded me that presence, consistency, and empathy form the foundation of human connection. Relationships, nurtured through repeated small gestures, support resilience, emotional well-being, and a positive outlook on life. By the time I returned home, I was ready for the next segment of the day. The quiet rhythm of social interaction had reinforced the principles I had been cultivating all morning: presence, mindfulness, consistency, and reflection. Ordinary actions, repeated intentionally, build not only physical health and mental clarity but also the emotional and relational layers that sustain a life well lived. The afternoon arrived with a gentle calm, a soft light filtering through the window, stretching slowly across the floor. The quiet hum of life outside continued, birds chirping intermittently, the distant sound of a lawn mower, and the occasional rustle of leaves. Inside, the apartment remained still, a space of familiarity and comfort. I settled into a chair by the window, a notebook and pen at hand, not to plan or organize this time, but to simply reflect. Reflection, I reminded myself, need not be dramatic. It is not about conclusions or sudden insights. It is about observation, presence, and the slow accumulation of understanding. I began by reviewing the morning. The gentle movements, the mindful breakfast, the slow walk through the neighborhood, each ordinary act carried its own quiet value. As I wrote, I noticed patterns emerging in my thoughts. Consistency, repetition, and presence were recurring themes. The mind, like the body, thrives on small, deliberate actions. Each moment of attention, each gesture performed with intention, builds not only physical health but mental clarity and emotional resilience. A cup of tea accompanied the reflection, steam curling upward as I observed it, noticing the subtle variations in its movement, the way the light caught the rising vapor. Such seemingly trivial observations anchor the mind in the present. I realized that mental well-being is cultivated in the ordinary, not the extraordinary. It is the accumulation of small, mindful acts, pausing to observe, noting gratitude, breathing attentively, that fosters stability and calm. I spent several minutes in quiet meditation. Sitting upright, I focused on breath, observing its rhythm, depth, and temperature. The mind naturally wandered, as it always does, drifting to tasks to be done or memories of the past. Each time it did, I gently returned attention to the breath. This process, repeated patiently, reinforced awareness and presence. Mental clarity does not emerge in a single, dramatic session but through repeated, patient engagement with the ordinary processes of attention and reflection. After meditation, I picked up a book. Not a novel filled with plot twists or excitement, but a calm, reflective text that encouraged thoughtfulness. Reading slowly, I allowed ideas to settle, not racing ahead or seeking thrills. Each paragraph offered quiet insight, subtle reminders about patience, self-discipline, and perspective. Ordinary reading, approached with attention, becomes a meditation in itself, a reinforcement of the principles I have been cultivating all morning and afternoon. Knowledge is often subtle, absorbed gradually, and applied through repeated reflection and practice. I paused to note things I was grateful for. Gratitude, I reminded myself, is not reserved for monumental events, it resides in the ordinary. The sunlight warming my hands, the taste of tea, the ability to breathe freely, the familiar rhythm of daily life, these are the building blocks of contentment and mental stability. Writing them down reinforced the acknowledgement that life's value is not always in grand moments but in small, repeated experiences that accumulate meaning over time. Later, I spent a few minutes visualizing intentions for the remainder of the day. Visualization is not about imagining drama or excitement, it is a subtle rehearsal of ordinary tasks performed with attention and care. I pictured completing minor household chores, engaging with neighbors politely, eating thoughtfully, and maintaining mindfulness in simple movements. These visualizations were gentle, steady reminders that growth, well-being, and resilience are built incrementally. Throughout the afternoon, I continued to observe my thoughts and emotions. Small waves of distraction, fatigue, or minor frustration arose occasionally, as they always do. I noticed them without judgment and returned attention to calm, ordinary awareness. Mindset exercises, repeated consistently, reinforce patience, self-awareness, and emotional regulation. Over time, the quiet repetition of these practices compounds, creating subtle but profound changes in mental well-being. I revisited journaling briefly, capturing reflections on the afternoon. Writing about ordinary moments, tea, meditation, reading, observation, reinforced the understanding that everyday experiences are not meaningless. The accumulation of attention, reflection, and deliberate engagement with life fosters stability, perspective, and resilience. Mental well-being is not created by dramatic events but by patient, consistent awareness of small, ordinary moments. I also practiced light mental exercises, noticing patterns in thought, observing habitual reactions, and gently challenging unhelpful perspectives. These were quiet, uneventful processes, yet they strengthened cognition, self-awareness, and emotional balance. Much like the body benefits from small, consistent physical activity, the mind benefits from subtle, repeated exercises in attention, reflection, and patience. By late afternoon, a subtle calm had settled throughout both body and mind. There was no rush, no urgency, no need for extraordinary events. The quiet practices of the day, the morning movement, mindful meals, journaling, walking, conversation, and reflection had woven a steady rhythm. This ordinary consistency, when observed attentively, reinforced the awareness that meaningful mental well-being is built not in dramatic moments, but in the quiet repetition of mindful, intentional acts. As I prepared for the evening, I felt a quiet satisfaction. The mind was steady, reflective, and attentive. The body was rested and nourished. Ordinary life, approached with patience, presence, and reflection, had shaped a meaningful, calm afternoon. The lessons of the day were clear: consistency, mindfulness, gratitude, and gentle reflection are powerful tools. Mental well-being, like physical health, is cultivated slowly, intentionally, and through attention to ordinary, repeated actions. Evening arrived slowly, the sun dipping lower in the sky, softening the light that filled the room. Shadows lengthened across familiar surfaces, and the air grew cooler, carrying with it the subtle sense of the approaching night. There was no urgency in the transition from day to evening, only a gentle awareness of time passing, and a quiet opportunity to reflect and settle. I moved through the apartment deliberately, sensing the calm that accompanied the winding down of daily activity. The first task was preparing dinner. Not a complicated meal, but a simple, nourishing one, chosen with care and attention. I gathered ingredients slowly, observing textures, colors, and smells. A few vegetables, a modest portion of grains, and a small protein, each element placed thoughtfully on the cutting board. I sliced, stirred, and prepared each part with deliberate attention, noticing the subtle sounds of chopping and cooking. There is something quietly meditative about preparing food with intention. The act itself is ordinary, yet it grounds the mind, reinforces presence, and nurtures the body simultaneously. As the meal cooked, I took a few moments to observe the room, noticing how the light had shifted since afternoon. The familiar corners, the stacks of books, the gentle sway of curtains in the evening breeze, all ordinary things, yet in their quiet consistency, they provided comfort and grounding. I reflected on the day's events, acknowledging the subtle accomplishments: morning stretches, mindful breakfast, journaling, walking, brief social interactions, afternoon reflection, and mental exercises. These actions, while uneventful in isolation, collectively formed a meaningful and structured day. Sitting down to eat, I continued the practice of mindfulness. Each bite was deliberate, observed for texture, flavor, and temperature. I chewed slowly, noticing how the body responded to nourishment. Eating, in this quiet and attentive way, reinforced the lessons of the day: growth and well-being are built gradually, through repeated, ordinary actions. The ordinary rhythm of meals, if approached with care, can provide satisfaction, energy, and reinforcement of healthy habits. After dinner, I cleaned the kitchen with deliberate movements. Washing dishes, drying them, and putting them away seemed trivial, yet the act was quietly grounding. Caring for the space where I live is also caring for the mind. Organization, tidiness, and attention to small details foster clarity and calm. Each action, repeated consistently, compounds over time, contributing to stability and self-discipline. Once the cleaning was complete, I moved to light stretching. Bending, reaching, and rotating slowly, I noticed the body's subtle responses: tension released, muscles lengthened, and joints welcomed the movement. Evening stretches are gentle affirmations of care for the body, reinforcing the cumulative benefits of daily activity. They remind me that ordinary, repeated actions, no matter how small, support long-term health and vitality. Next, I journeyed briefly about the day. I reflected on patterns, habits, and insights, capturing the quiet progress made. Journaling is not about drama or extraordinary revelation, it is about recording ordinary experiences and acknowledging subtle growth. Each line written reinforced awareness of the day's structure, the attention to routine, and the consistent practice of mindfulness. Over time, these records become a repository of understanding, a tangible reflection of persistence, patience, and intentional living. As nighttime approached, I prepared for rest. I tidied the living space once more, arranged pillows, and ensured that surfaces were orderly. The routine of preparing for night, while simple, reinforced consistency and calm. There was satisfaction in completing these small acts, knowing that they contributed to mental clarity and emotional balance. Nighttime rituals, repeated consistently, provide a sense of closure and continuity, framing the day as purposeful and complete. Before lying down, I paused for quiet reflection. I observed the day without judgment or desire for drama. Morning, afternoon, and evening had unfolded in gentle repetition, movement, mindful nutrition, journaling, light interaction, reflection, and self-care. There were no peaks of excitement, no dramatic events, yet the cumulative effect of these ordinary acts created stability, calm, and a sense of fulfillment. True growth, I realized, often emerges in the quiet accumulation of such actions rather than in fleeting moments of intensity. I noted subtle lessons learned: patience, presence, consistency, mindfulness, and gratitude. These principles, woven through the uneventful moments of the day, were quietly shaping character, reinforcing mental clarity, and supporting emotional resilience. I acknowledged that life does not always need drama or excitement to be meaningful. In the slow unfolding of ordinary routines lies depth, learning, and a steady accumulation of well-being. Finally, as I lay in bed, I reflected on the value of ordinary days. Each small action, the stretches, the meals, the journaling, the brief social interactions, forms the invisible architecture of a life lived intentionally. The calm satisfaction of consistency, the grounding effect of repeated habits, and the quiet cultivation of mindfulness all converge to create a meaningful existence. Even without drama, excitement, or extraordinary events, life possesses richness when approached with awareness, patience, and care. As sleep approached, I allowed thoughts to drift gently. Gratitude for the day, awareness of the routines, and acknowledgement of small accomplishments filled my mind. The quiet rhythm of ordinary life had provided nourishment for body, mind, and spirit. I felt ready to rest, confident that tomorrow would unfold similarly, offering another opportunity for reflection.